This is episode 268 of the Reel Me In, a movie podcast. On this week's episode, Chase and Joel will take a look at Fighting With My Family, the new film about the WWE star Paige and her explosion into the WWE stratosphere. All that and more on today's Reel Me In. What is going on, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the flavor of the week that is Reel Me In, a movie podcast. I am one of your co-hosts, Chase Lee, and hey, listen, you know what, if you're new to this show, hopefully we didn't scare you off with that really bad intro. Don't worry, I'm getting better at them. But yeah, if you're new to the show, welcome. What we typically do is we'll go over some movie trailers, some movie news that happened throughout the week, and we will commentate on them for you guys. Then we'll have a review or reviews of movies that have dropped on said week that we record. As stated, this is episode 268, where we will be going over Fighting With My Family, the film about Paige, the youngest female in the WWE to win a belt, I believe, and really kind of made a really great first impression in the sport. And so that is what we'll be talking about. And then, of course, if you're a returning listener, welcome back. We always love having you guys come back and listen to us every single week, whether you're working out, driving to work, whatever you guys are doing, we appreciate it. So, that is the show for you. And, of course, I'm not joined alone. That would be blasphemous. I am joined by my co-host, the cohort, the co-pilot, the person that steers me into the correct direction on the show, because I do like to veer off occasionally. And his name is Joseph, good old Joel Copling. Joel, how are we doing this week? It's kind of a sad state because we live in a post-Oscar world on Twitter, and it's almost like Mad Max, where it's apocalyptic. Everyone's dirty. Everyone's fighting for water, and it's just a nasty scene. So how are you doing out there in the Mad Max film Twitter?
It's a world of blood and bone, or whatever he says.
Right.
Yeah, it's interesting. Watch the Oscars. I ended up watching the Oscars on Monday. Instead of Sunday night. I had to work and all that and couldn't get back in time. But yeah, I watched them. We'll get into that a little bit in a little while after the trailers to review the show. But it is very interesting. Film Twitter is all a Twitter about this, and it's certainly a conversation. Otherwise, doing pretty well. Busy week at work. We hired a new person, so that's been happening.
Joel, I thought you said you've been working there for months. Hey, we'll be here all night, folks.
Oh boy.
They hired me. I hired myself.
You need to fire yourself, sir. No, but anyway, so that's been happening. Otherwise, just kind of hanging out. Started a new project for myself that I'll talk about a little bit later on. Near the end of the show, and so a new film related project that I'm really excited about. So just kind of hanging in there. What about you, sir?
Well, just another week has gone by. Caught up with the film Gloria Bell, the Julianne Moore film from A24. I'm not allowed to discuss it quite yet, but it was let's just say it was a little pleasant night out at the movies. So there was that, and of course I saw Fighting With My Family on Tuesday, so that was my week. And then of course you guys always, I don't know if you guys even tune in for this or if you just mute me completely and just like, please get on with the trailers, sir. But I always love going over what I watched throughout the week, right? And so it was right before we recorded tonight, and my girlfriend turned to me and she was like, "Are you going to talk about what we saw this week?" And I was like, "Of course I am." Now, obviously, Joel and I have switched the tone of the show. Yes, we joke around a lot, and I have a lot of risque humor, but I still like to keep it PG for the most part. So what I'm about to say is 100% true if you've never heard this story, and I will use the anatomical terms, so this is how it goes. So it is the Amazon Prime docu-series. It's only 4 parts, so it's not that long. It's about an hour a piece, but it's called Lorena. And yeah, see, Joel knows where I'm going with this. So if you guys
that's exactly where I thought you were going as soon as you said that you were going to use anatomical terms. I was like, oh, he watched it.
Yeah. So okay, so if you guys were not aware of this, obviously Joel and I would have not been aware of this, even though it happened during our time. We were kids at that time, so we would only probably hear about that until when we were in high school. But back in the 90s, there was a couple that they were married. They seemed like they were the American family, just like married and just having a good time, right? And then there's a police call that goes out, and the husband is bleeding. He's bleeding profusely, and it's just like, well, what happened? It turns out that his wife went into the bed in the middle of the night, unraveled the covers, like ever so gently, right? Just imagine, just ever so gently unraveled the covers and sliced his penis off. Now, you're probably wondering, like, there's no way this is real. I can tell you right now, it is 100% real. I actually remember hearing about this story back when I was in middle school, high school, but I didn't really think anything of it. But this docuseries kind of goes into that, and this is, pre-internet era, so this trial for both of them, because they were both charged with separate crimes, and so each trial and the whole lead up to it was just this pre-internet sensation. It was on all TV channels, and they covered it 24/7, and it's so weird because the husband, John Wayne Bobbitt, he took his fame and he did porn, and I'm like, this is so bizarre. And then we have the wife, who obviously got divorced because he was abusing her, and she goes on talk shows. It's such a just fascinating story. I mean, I'm actually more curious. I'm actually being serious when I say this, but like, even when the microsurgeons were talking, I still can't believe they were able to attach it properly. Like, this was not a lost cause. He was able to get it surgically put back on him with, like, veins and arteries and all that stuff. Like, and everything worked fine. Like, well, after, like, a couple of years of healing, but it's crazy, man. So that's what we watched. Jordan Peele actually executive produced, so definitely helped fund that one. So God bless that man, really just kind of putting his hands wherever he can in the industry, and I'm okay with that. But that is what we watched this week. So Lorena, it is on Amazon Prime if you want to watch that crazy, crazy story. So,
well, what's insane is I've been watching a lot of Oscars stuff recently on YouTube. They have a bunch of the shows, in kind of chunks way back, and I think it was the 1994 Oscars, or one of the kind of mid-90s Oscars when Whoopi Goldberg hosted. There was a Lorena Bobbitt joke. So,
oh my god!
now it's made its way back into the zeitgeist because of this docuseries. And
right.
Anyway, and also in that show, she kind of had this long spiel about gay rights, women's rights. So nothing's changed.
Right.
Yeah,
it's
crazy.
It's what's even like more fascinating about this story, because typically when you have cases of and I'll make this real quick and then we'll move on, because I know I long-wind certain topics, but in the trial, she's sitting up there, she's crying, and like she's like, this guy abused me, he raped me, and in these certain cases, when it's like a one-off, it's a he said, she said type of deal. So you have to just kind of pick your poison and be like, okay, who do I believe are the facts on the table? What can I see? What can I do to make my decision more clearly? After this case, he was charged with other counts of abuse and rape by several different people post this trial, to where it ran up all the way up until 2005. 5. And keep in mind that this trial was like in 1990-91, so it's like, if at that point, if you have been charged by the police and you have gone to jail for abuse or rape, or you've been tried, you've gone to trial, like, it seems like she's the one that was telling the truth. So, as it kept going, I'm just like, don't really know who's telling the truth, but like, as people kept talking about John Wayne Bobbitt and like just other women that have come forward and stuff, you're like, okay, it sounds like this guy's a piece of garbage and needs to go away. So now he lives in Nevada, very lonely and very interesting, Joel. It wasn't even the fact that he is living in Nevada alone, and he probably will die alone. It's the fact that, now listen, I don't like to make things political on this show, but I thought this was funny, so I'm just going to bring it up. Obviously, I know who he voted for in the 2016 election, and it was just funny to see him have Donald J. Trump on his license plates on the car. Like, now I have seen supporters of like both sides like be pretty fanatic with their picks. I've never seen license plates before, so props to him, I guess. So, well, because they showed it like several times in close-ups. I'm like, okay, well, thank you for telling me what his license plate is, but I just thought that was an interesting thing. So, yeah, that is what we watched this week. Fun stuff. My girlfriend's going out of town for a couple weeks, so I probably won't watch anything new. So if Joel asks me next week what I watch, I'll probably tell you nothing. So that is how that will go. And before we begin, guys, if you could spread this episode around and let people know this is your favorite movie podcast to listen to and help grow our community and our numbers and stuff, that would be greatly appreciated. And, maybe one day in the future, Joel and I can record in the same room and have an actual studio, feed the vibe off of one another instead of doing over Skype. But for right now, it is what it is. Okay, so let's talk about some trailers. As I was telling Joel before we started recording, there wasn't that many new trailers that dropped this week. There was a couple of smaller ones that we'll get to, but I want to kind of blaze through the biggest 3 that came out this week. Now we have Pokemon Detective Pikachu, we have X-Men Dark Phoenix, and we have Hellboy. Now they each one of those films have released their second trailers for the film, all kind of vastly different from the first trailers that they dropped. So I'll just kind of go down the line and give you guys my quick thoughts. So for the Pokemon one, now I can't wait to see it even more. I remember when Joel and I were talking about the first one, and we're like, dude, this looks like Blade Runner for Pokemon. This is great. I'm all for this. This second trailer sold me even more. They showed a lot more Pokemon that I kind of wish I didn't see this trailer to see, so I could see it revealed in the movie. But it still has that really cool Blade Runner vibe for kids, and it looks like it's going to be a little edgier, because I was actually surprised that Warner Brothers kept this in the trailer. There's a part where Pikachu turns around to the kid, and he's like, "Get me the hell out of here." He says that, and I'm just like, oh, that's cool. I don't mind an edgier film, but I'm surprised they kept that in the trailer. But yeah, overall, fantastic tone. I love the way it's shot. The CGI in these Pokemon are ridiculous in the best way possible. So I can't wait for it. The second trailer amped up my anticipation for it. The X-Men Dark Phoenix trailer. I liked the first trailer. It was like, hey, X-Men are coming back. There you go. I got to be honest. When the second trailer dropped, I was going on the Twitter feed because, as Joel stated, it is just a wonderful place to get film opinions. As people were just like bashing X-Men Dark Phoenix, like, oh, it looks like X-Men The Last Stand ripoff, yada, yada, yada. I actually like trailer 2 more. Is it something that like is going to make my like top 5 anticipated for the summer? No. But I think as a second trailer, it kind of amped up my anticipation a little bit more, showing a little bit more action set pieces, showing a little bit more of the pathos. Because right off the bat, they kill an X-Men. Like, they straight up, within the first, 20 seconds, kill one of them. And that's how they kind of propelled the trailer. I'm like, okay, that was fascinating. So yeah, I actually thought the second trailer was a little bit better. Some of the stuff looks a little too borderline cartoonish. I know it's weird. I realize it's more science fiction. But when you look at something like a Days of Future Past, where like that had a really nice like grounded feel to it, because that's what the X-Men are all about. This one has that, but I realize that this story, they're going into space and everything, so a lot of stuff you have to suspend with disbelief a little bit, and I'm not quite there yet, but I think in terms of amping up my excitement, it's a little bit more amped up. So Pokemon is in the lead so far, but Hellboy decided to drop a trailer, and they dropped a green band and a red band because they were they got their rating back a couple weeks ago. It is rated R, so if you guys are curious, it is not PG-13 like the originals. I like it. It's one of those like midnight monster madness movies that I would love to just go shovel popcorn in my face. I don't even like popcorn, and just sit there and just have a grand old time with it. It's gory, it's ridiculous, and I think David Harbour does not steal anything away from Ron Perlman. It makes it his own. Some of the lines were kind of funny, and I was like, okay, maybe they're saving some of the good stuff for the movie. But you know what? I'm excited to see it. I never thought I'd say that, but it comes out a week after Shazam, and of course, 2 weeks after that is Avengers. So April is just going to be a great month for my favorite blockbuster genre. So yeah, not a bad second trailer release from all three of those films. Okay, so the two that dropped that were new, both kind of small. The first one is going to be Finding Steve McQueen. Now this one, if my internet will work, this one is directed by Mark Steven Johnson. It stars, Forrest Whitaker, Rachel Taylor, Travis Fimmel, William Fichtner, and this one tells a story in 1972. A gang of close-knit thieves from Youngstown, Ohio, attempt to steal a $30 million in illegal contributions and blackmail money from the President Richard Nixon's secret fund. That's awesome, right? And when you watch the trailer, it kind of has like that almost like Edgar Wright vibe mixed in with like a Guy Ritchie vibe. So like mix in like Baby Driver and Snatch, and I think you got your movie. And I had a lot of fun with it. I thought it was really well edited with the trailer, and it looks really great. I don't know, March 15th. So actually a couple more weeks it releases. Looks like a pretty nice little heist film. And speaking of heists and bank robberies, that is the next one, and it's called Stockholm. And this one stars Ethan Hawke as he attempts to rob a bank. And this is actually based on a 1973 true story, actual hostage crisis that happened in Stockholm. But he goes into the bank, holds them up, and he kind of captures the one of the tellers, in this case played by Noomi Rapace, and they kind of form a relationship as he's being talked down to by the negotiator. And I enjoyed it. It's interesting because when the movie or the trailer starts, you're like, oh, this is going to be kind of like a serious drama type of thriller, because it opens up with the Stockholm Syndrome definition. So I'm like, okay, that makes sense. It's a play on the title because the actual event happened in Stockholm, the actual city. So nice little double thing happening, double meeting. But it starts out with like this kind of like bumbling bank robber that's like not cracking jokes, but like his buffoonery and his bumbliness is actually what causes the comedy. And so they actually played that up through the entire thing, where he didn't really know what he was doing, and his mistakes were actually causing the comedy to ensue. So yeah, it looks funny. It looks like a nice little entertaining movie. And Ethan Hawke playing this really kind of out there bank robber is perfect casting. He's so much fun to watch in this trailer. And I haven't really seen Naomi Rapace in a long time. So, yeah, good little trailer. Finding Steve McQueen, good little I've actually liked this week, even with the trailer twos. So, yeah, that's pretty much it. There was really nothing else that dropped. Now, I know Joel is just biting with anticipation because next week is Captain Marvel. And you know, Joel, that all these studios are just going to butt dump all their trailers on the internet. And I'm going to have to pick them out. Yeah, butt dump. They're going to just go poop them out all over the internet. And I'm going to have to pick not like 20 of them and whittle it down. So that's going to be fun for me next week.
Good luck.
Right. So thank you. But yeah, small trailers this week, but not a bad week overall. So Joel, out of the because we've already talked about the three blockbusters, out of the two smaller films, which one kind of does your interest gauge to?
The Finding Steve McQueen is really interesting. That sounds like a good cast, good concept. But both of them do. So yeah, if I were to pick, I would pick Finding Steve McQueen. But yeah, both sound really good. All right. So news this week, guys. All right. What we're gonna do is something a little different. Nothing happened this week, again, because it's really quiet out there right now. So we're going to go ahead and kind of review the Oscars telecast. So, of course, Green Book was the big winner for Best Picture, but Bohemian Rhapsody won the most awards of any night with 4 for Best Actor, Film Editing, and both Sound Awards. So I'll just go to Chase first. Any big surprises for you from this year's telecast or winners or anything?
Well, if we're going to start with the winners, the only surprise, because like everything else was like pretty on point with our discussions and our predictions and just our coverage throughout. I love the Black Panther wins. That's great, because I even told you I'm not really for the Best Picture nomination, but you know what? I said if it were to win anything, it'd be for costume or production design, because that stuff was actually pretty good. I love the fact that Alfonso won for directing and cinematography. That was cool. Yeah. And then the biggest shock, because, you know, going into it, we have all these film pundits, we have all these award shows, we have all of these predictions going for one person and maybe like a dark horse, and that's it. And the fact that everyone's second pick or dark horse was actually the winner for Best Actress is quite shocking. I was for sure betting that Glenn Close was going to get it, and if the dark horse was not actually, I didn't even have Olivia Colman in my top 2. It was Melissa McCarthy, like we discussed last week, and then it was Coleman. But the fact that she won is great. It's the only win that the favorite got that night. I'm super proud of that. Kind of bummed that Rami got Bohemian Rhapsody for Best Actor. Kind of wish it went to Bale, but you know, it is what it is. Still not have seen If Beale Street Can Talk. I just want to let you guys know that. So I don't know. I'm so glad that Spider-Man won for animated feature. That was really fun to see. And that's about it. Everything else was pretty on point in terms of the awards. I loved watching I'm a sucker for this movie now. I'm going to go ahead and just say it. I remember reviewing it on the show last year for you guys, and I gave it a great grade. But my girlfriend and I rewatched A Star is Born before the Oscar ceremony. I love that movie. I unapologetically just love it to pieces, and I was kind of grinning ear to ear when they were performing on stage with Shallow. But to just the overall telecast, you know what? The no-host thing worked for me. I actually thought it was a breezier show, and that's weird to say because it was still over 3 hours. It felt shorter, and maybe we're working our way towards an even shorter show, which is totally fine as long as we focus on the films and the winners and the speeches. I don't care whatever you stuff in between, but as long as there's enough time for all that. So, yeah, I actually thought the no-host thing was a pretty good idea. You know, I thought it went by pretty smoothly. Other than that, just a basic telecast. Kind of got a little boring in some parts, but I think overall it wasn't as bad of a train wreck. We're talking just pure telecast. As bad of a train wreck as we thought it would be. Now, as far as the winners go, oh good Lord, as Joel can attest to, because we have joked about it, but it is a true thing. Film Twitter is a cesspool sometimes, and like I just remember when Bohemian Rhapsody was winning a lot, or Green Book, like people were livid. And listen, if you hate Bohemian Rhapsody, I totally get your points. If you hate Green Book, I know Joel and I are at least we are teamed up on that one. We don't really understand the hate, too much on that one, but we still like it. But we don't think it really deserves Best Picture. But we can move on with their lives. We don't have to, make it a big deal. But so Joel, I want to fire it back to you. Like, were there any surprises or anything that was so out of the ordinary that caught you off guard? And of course, what did you think of the telecast?
The Coleman thing was a total mind effer, as Andy Bernard might say. It's interesting though. It's not quite an Adrian Brody and the Pianist kind of thing. This was the dark horse winning in 2002 or 3, however you want to look at that. I forgot what number, 75th, I guess, awards. When Adrian Brody won Best Actor, everybody was suspecting it would be between Nicolas Cage. Daniel Day-Lewis for Gangs of New York and Jack Nicholson for About Schmidt. And nobody ever expected Adrian Brody to win. He was like considered the fourth possibility after even Nicolas Cage for adaptation. So it's not quite that kind of total upset. But it was definitely surprising considering every single, precursor went to close, and she's been nominated. I think this was her 7th nomination. So everybody thought that it would be her, and I'm thrilled for Coleman. I didn't see The Wife. I still haven't, so I can't say whether or not Glenn Close deserved that, as more than a career award. I just can't say it because I haven't seen the movie. It'd have been cool to see her win because, of course, she's, Cruella de Vil. She's part of my childhood in some way. So that was a total surprise. It led to the best speech of the night, I thought, because Olivia Colman is a giant teddy bear of adorableness. And
I totally agree. Like,
yeah,
that
she's
was
so funny.
It was the most genuine out of everyone.
And now, of course, she's mostly new just to American audiences. She's huge in Britain,
right?
Particularly because of The Crown, but also because of films like Tyrannosaur and other projects that she's been in that just haven't quite translated over here. So this is almost as much of a career award for Coleman as it would have been for Close. Maybe not quite as long, but it was definitely one of those she's overdue for something awards, because I don't think that she had won much over there either in terms of big awards. But yeah, I'm thrilled for it. It's a great performance, great movie, and kind of sad it didn't win more, but whatever the case, I'm glad it took that. And Rami Malek, whatever, I maintain it's a bad performance. Kind of disappointed that he won and Bale didn't, or any of the others didn't.
Joel, is it weird for me to say that after the Oscars were done with, I said to myself, I never want. I even with me, that's someone that is a little bit more positive on the film. I never want to talk about that movie again. It gives people headaches, and whether you liked it or disliked it, I hate the bickering online. Like, can we just please move on?
Yeah. I mean, it's a stickler kind of thing for people because of just the nature of his performance is so, like, honestly kind of bizarre, and also just the baggage that the movie has behind the scenes and all of that. And yeah, absolutely. After this, I don't want to mention it ever again. But with the Green Book thing and the online reaction, it's interesting because I literally just saw this thing. I think it was Slant Magazine who gave the complete list of winners, and obviously they used that to comment on what the Best Picture winner means and all of that. And they said, they weren't surprised. It tells us nothing that we didn't already know about the Academy. And I just want to say to everybody who's spouting this line, um, please do at least like 5 seconds of soul searching and remember that a movie about a lady who falls in love with a fish won less Best Picture last year. The year before that, it was a triptych of non-plot stories about a young gay black man, and the year before that, it was a procedural about you know, uncovering secrets of the Catholic Church. And the year before that, it was Birdman, which is its own thing. So there's especially in recent years, there's no Best Picture Oscar bait kind of thing that usually wins. Now, does that mean that Green Book is somehow out of sorts for the Oscars? No, it's probably the most Oscars-like winner that they've had since maybe The King's Speech, I would say, something safe. Maybe Argo. Maybe Argo. Something safe, something that doesn't, and this is not, slagging on The King's Speech or Argo, but, safe stuff. The stuff that works because it plays right into the audience's emotions. That's what Green Book is. And so, is it a good variation on that? That's in the eye of the beholder. Chase and I like the movie, mostly for the actors, and because it's an actor showcase, and they're good, and they anchor it, and that's it. There's really there's no stakes. There's nothing more going on here. It's unfortunate that the film has a director who was, being an idiot in very predatorial ways in the past, and the Oscars have given Roman Polanski a Best Director Oscar, so we should probably know by now that this is going to happen. Maybe it'll change at some point. Maybe it won't. You never know. But for now, stop trying to overrate almost the fact that this won Best Picture and that it's so indicative of some sort of conspiratorial thing that it's just what they liked, and it's also perfect for the preferential ballot. There's a video that you can watch on YouTube that explains that, but people who were voting this in one and two on their ballots, that's where they got it, and it was extremely popular with the Academy members who could vote for this kind of thing. It wasn't really super popular critically. It wasn't super popular with audiences in the way that it was with the Academy. Certainly not popular with film Twitter. And, that's fine. That happens. The King's Speech, kind of a similar situation. It was better critically than this, but kind of a similar situation. And, stuff that's safe and kind of maybe a little bit antiquated is going to win the Oscar for Best Picture. It's going to happen. Maybe it won't happen next year. We don't know. Certainly Netflix is going to try to push The Irishman to Best Picture. It could happen. So, the stuff, they announce a different kind of Best Picture every year. And even if it happens to repeat something from the year before or the year before that, they give it to a different kind of movie pretty much every time. And only rarely do they come back to repeat themselves with something like this. And so it is a typical Oscar winner. Is it the worthy one? No. I thought Vice was. Chase thought Roma was. So, for me, it's just a simple case of whatever. It's another year. It's kind of a boring winner. I'll say that. It's not exactly what I wanted to see win, or even the kind of movie that I wanted to see win, just because it's so safe in general. But I'm not gonna fuss over it for a week, and like people are doing, and we're gonna get into some other internet related response stuff here in a second. But yeah, as for the other winners, I really liked, as you said, Spider-Man winning animated feature. It's the best nominee from the four that I saw. I hadn't seen Mirai, but Spider-Man's great, bold, inventive, a genuinely deconstructive look at Spider-Man. I really like that. But on the on the other end of the spectrum is Bohemian Rhapsody winning for best film editing and, bizarrely enough, for best sound editing. And I'm going to just say, this is my last word on these, and then we'll move on. But to the next news item, so to speak. Bohemian Rhapsody won Best Sound Editing for putting Queen songs in a Queen movie. That's pretty much what happened. Now, did it have a nice mix? Yes, it did. Especially in the Live Aid scene, it really did mix all of the elements super well. Made it really comprehensible, in an audio sense, and that's nice. I figured that was going to win. It's the one that certainly makes the most sense and probably annoys me the least about its wins. Malik is certainly annoying in terms of the fact that I think personally it's borderline SNL. But the sound editing is not like exploratory almost is the word I like to use. It's not showy enough. I feel like it was just I really like this movie vote on the Academy's part. And best film editing is baffling to me because essentially what that means is they basically just awarded the movie for having no director at a certain point in the post-production process of the movie, and the editing that transpired because of the team salvaged something from being a complete train wreck to being slightly palatable and comprehensible and understandable. And that to me is not good film editing. It's good butt saving. That's about it. And especially considering the context of First Man being, absent from that category this year, something like that is truly mesmerizingly edited, and something like Widows is, it should have gone to Vice or The Favorite or something. It's not good film editing. It's just good business sense, and that's kind of my last word on it. But anyway, I was just disappointed by all of the, all but one of the wins for Bohemian Rhapsody. So that's my 2 cents on it. We'll move on now. I agree. But, I guess one more thing. I do agree about the no host thing. I think that it worked well, and I think that they need to keep this up. Because as I said before, whenever this first came out, that they were not going to have a host, or that they were thinking about not having a host, they don't need a host. The host just does a monologue that is usually contentious and very, either inappropriate or really kind of maybe brings the house down if it's like Jon Stewart or Whoopi Goldberg or Billy Crystal. But those are only 3 hosts. Usually they're not very good. And they always give this monologue that's super contentious and kind of ripped apart the next day, and it's not constructive, and it doesn't. You just don't need a host. It's not necessary, and I think that this show moved along really well. It didn't feel like it was directionless in any way, and because they had people doing, hitting their marks, and that's all people need to do. So they just need to hit their marks. The announcer needs to say who they are. That's it. And
now, Joel, yeah. I do have a suggestion. Now, if they want to do this, that's totally fine. But I still stand by for 99.9% of my faith that there should be no host. But if that 0.01% is a producer picking up the phone and calling Amy Poehler, Tina Fey, and Maya Rudolph, then I'm totally fine with that. Because they were like a warm, gentle welcome to the whole ceremony, and I kind of liked their presence. So if they want to make them hosts, I would be okay with that.
It was interesting how they basically said, there's no host, so we're going to try to be hosts for just a few minutes.
Right.
And, they started off pretty well. I kind of thought they went on a little bit because it was kind of awkward how they transitioned from these like pseudo-hosts to we're presenting Best Supporting Actress. I just felt that was a little weird.
Not as weird of a transition as Queen with Adam Lambert, then transitioning to the.
That's true.
Yeah,
that's true. And if they want to do something like, honestly, if they want to do something like Queen opening, like Queen opening, not every year, but something like that with a performance, or maybe a performance of one of the songs that's nominated.
I'm calling it right now. Elton John's going to perform in front of the Oscars next year. It's right. Going to happen. Rocket Man's going to be huge. They're going to get him. It's going to be perfect.
Yeah. And then Taron Egerton is going to win Best Actor.
Yep,
Okay,
it's gonna be a whole repeating cycle.
Yep. Best actor, best film editing, all of it. Hopefully, it'll deserve all of those things. There we go. That's my last little dig at Bohemian Rhapsody. I'm never going to mention it again. It is a movie that does not exist. We're going to move on to some of the fun side of the internet, folks, and I'm totally kidding. All right, so Chase, I want to take you back in time. I want to take you back in time to mid-July of 2012. So we were all anticipating the release of The Dark Knight Rises, the third and final film in Christopher Nolan's Batman trilogy. And, you know, the screenings were scheduled for Monday night and Tuesday afternoon, and it was going to be a situation where just a few hours after that Tuesday afternoon screening, the embargo was going to be lifted. I think at that point, it was a midnight embargo release so that people woke up to reviews, right? So all the reviews broke on that Wednesday, or maybe it was Tuesday. I can't remember, but it was in the middle of the week. And for a while, there was a bunch of really like positive reviews. Then there was a negative review. And that negative review was by a critic named Eric D. Snyder, who decided to post this thing. And I don't know if you remember this. Hopefully, I'm like totally giving you a blast from the past right now. There was a joke. You click through on the review where the blurb was that he was saying it was the worst film in the franchise, and that he included Batman and Robin in that, and he gave it a D. And then you open the website. There's a joke. He was kidding about it, and he decided to link his review anyway, for some reason. And people kind of started sending him death threats, and Rotten Tomatoes told him to stop. I think that they briefly banned him from the website, but unfortunately, and I'm not really blaming him. I'm just saying that it kind of began a snowball effect. There were other negative reviews, a couple of them from women critics. Death threats were given to the critics who seriously didn't like it. Rape threats were sent to the women critics. And after a few days of waffling whether or not he should have them stop the comments, Matt Atchity, who was the CEO at the time, decided, or the site runner, whatever they're called, decided that they would just stop comments. Nobody could ever comment on a critic's review again, and a public service was formed that day, whatever day that was. It was after the movie had officially opened, and finally people could stop harassing people. So I bring that up because something very similar happened this week. Now this story kind of starts about a year ago, when A Wrinkle in Time had been in theaters, I think, for a few weeks, and Brie Larson was speaking somewhere, and I forgot where it was, but stated that she was not super interested in what a 40-year-old white man would say about A Wrinkle in Time, as it was not made for that person, for a 40-year-old white man. Kind of got people up in arms. It was a very, kind of shocking, hyperbolic statement. Certainly, she kind of backtracked the seriousness of it later on, but people ignored that. That essentially what she meant was she's more interested in writers of color taking on a movie like that, not that white critics should just not review the movie. That's what she meant. Of course, people took it to mean the more serious thing, and that kind of put a bunch of stink eye in white males on YouTube and other places who decided then and there that they did not like her. And of course, at this point, she was, I think, shooting or about to shoot Captain Marvel. So people were having like excitement with an asterisk for Captain Marvel. So now the movie's made. It's coming out next week. There is a function on Rotten Tomatoes. For some reason, it's been active all these years, where fans can rate a movie and review a movie before it comes out. and people have been intentionally downvoting Captain Marvel in recent weeks because of Larson's kind of desire to diversify her the junket pool of junket journalists and critics that will interview her. She didn't want them all to be white, and it's usually overwhelmingly white. So she wanted to pull back on that. She wanted to look for the other critics that might not have a voice. Now, of course, this once again, because of intentional misunderstanding, set off alarm bells across YouTube. These white people who decided that because of the thing that they intentionally misunderstood about her statement was slightly annoying to them, they decided she was racist. She was wanting Captain Marvel to fail, and all of that. So because of that, they were downvoting, sort of like they did with Black Panther, almost different reasons. They downvoted the movie to the point that it was at a 44% audience rating, and I think like a 31% want to see rating, because of the fact that they had the don't want to see button on there too, and a lot of people were pressing that. So what Rotten Tomatoes decided to do was remove the functionality to comment, to review movies before they came out. It will kick in on the day of their release. I assume that means on Fridays. I would hope that they're not going to open it back up like on Thursday morning, because literally the same thing will happen, just much later than anticipated. But anyway, of course, this caused a lot of trouble for people who are irrelevant in the conversation. And now we have this thing where people are canceling their tickets. This is sort of an aside. This was a specific example of somebody publicizing their canceled ticket. And it was absolutely one of the funniest things I've ever seen. So there was this person who decided that he was going to kind of take a stand, and his form of protest was to cancel his AMC A-list AMC A-list stub ticket, so that his showtime for next Thursday night was canceled. All right. This is the funniest thing in the world, because literally they lost no money. Guys, how A-list works is you pay monthly and you can buy 3 tickets per week, which means that his ticket was covered, which means that when he scheduled it, it was $0. There was no money that they lost because of this guy's protest, and it's pretty much repeated all over the place. Some with actual money, which whatever. I'm sure that Brie Larson doesn't really want those kinds of people to see the movie. The ones who are essentially whiners. That's what the culture is. It's a culture of whiners. But I just wanted to kind of get Chase's thought on this, the whole business. I mean, is this extremely Star Wars: The Last Jedi to you?
This is so stupid. I can't believe. Joel and I are almost 30 years old. If Joel was acting like this on the internet, I would call him out so hard and embarrass him to a point where he would never do that again. Because these people are around our age, and the fact that they are protesting something so idiotic and stupid, it almost makes my head hurt. When I look at stuff like this online, I think to myself, Joel, how sad does your life have to be to where you get to a point where you have to complain about a movie on Twitter? So that's already first and foremost, so you have enough time to do that. You have to make multiple videos about it on YouTube, so there's that. Then you do the whole, like you said, the A-list removal thing, which is hilarious because you've already paid your monthly fee, you beesh. It's really sad to know that people act this way when she did not say any of those things that they're accusing her of. From what I've gathered, if you read actually what she said, she's just advocating for more people of color, people of the other gender to review movies, right? Like broaden the criticism community. Like that's kind of all I gathered. And I was like, okay, so what's so infuriating about that? I don't know. I guess those people can't stand that. The one that baffled me the most was the one guy. The guy taking his ticket off the A-list thing was already like gold, but then there was one dude that compared a picture of her, kind of kneeling down, talking with a fan at the Captain Marvel premiere, to a picture of Hitler talking to a little kid. I'm like, this is insanity. You're talking about a real life person that murdered millions of people to an actress that plays a fictional character in a movie. Wow, you must have a lot of time on your hands. So I think when Joel and I retire, we're going to complain about stuff on the internet, and we're going to spend all of our time focusing on one thing that we disagree with. We're going to make several videos about it. We're going to tweet. It's going to be so great. We're going to have such a large fan base, Joel. People are going to love us, and we're not going to have a crap attitude at all.
Somebody out there who is listening and who is funny and funnier than us should maybe create like a series of satirical characters.
I kind of want to do that
who
now.
Are internet personalities, to use the term loosely. Usually these guys who are saying this have no personality.
They really don't, because
they really don't. They're all monotone and
if you looked at that one guy that took it off of deleted his ticket, right, refunded, whatever. I went to his YouTube page. This guy has a reaction channel, and I'm like, where's the personality in this? He's just like, because he was talking about the Ghostbusters thing, and I forgot what he said in the video, but it was something to this accord, right? He was like, yeah, so Jason Reitman said some stuff about the Ghostbusters movie from 2016, and I remember seeing that 2016 version. I'm a fan of the original, but I remember seeing that 2016 version. I remember it wasn't bad. Like it was that type of delivery, and I'm like, I can't believe this guy has subscribers. You know what's gonna be really funny? We're gonna find out through really great private eye reporting is that the guy that did all this, caused all this hoopla, is a listener to our show. And we're going to be making fun of him, and he's going to be like, I'm not listening to these guys anymore. Well, good. We have lost one person. It's really idiotic and sad, and you have to be a really pathetic, just really small-minded person. Like, you were dumb. Like, you were physically, emotionally, just even, like, you're just dumb. Like, Joel, like, can you wrap my head around this? Like, how do you get to that point where a movie just makes you so angry, and it kind of just makes you look like a sexist D-bag at this point? Like, how can you get to a point like that where you have to make a fuss about it online, and just, like, you have to let people know, and it's just for validation? It's just, like, can you ever see yourself getting to that point?
No, because I'm not a sexist D-bag. And that's probably where you get there,
right,
is by becoming one. By only exposing yourself to white male voices for your entire life.
Which is the point she was getting at.
Right,
so
exactly.
It's like you were proving her point. Like, like you're just fueling this fire.
Precisely, and it's also the wrong-headed notion that comics are only for white guys, which is demonstrably untrue. It's also the notion that comic books are not political when they've been political from the start, or at least socio-political, if not outright political.
It's the same people that are just like, why is Star Wars becoming so political? It's always been political, you dummy.
Exactly. And Star Wars was a direct commentary on the Vietnam War. That's part of what Lucas's intention was.
Once, like, I'm not even joking. I won't say names because I don't do that on this show, and luckily they don't listen to it anyways. But I have someone that I work with, because all of them are relatively older than me, like at least by 20 years, right? And so a lot of them grew up with the original Star Wars, rightfully so, because they're dinosaurs. So I was talking with them one day about The Last Jedi and just where we think Episode 9 will go. I'm like, I really like The Last Jedi. It's my favorite one of the series. And they're just like, yeah, I just stopped watching after Force Awakens. It's getting so political. Kathleen Kennedy just shoving down politics down our throats, and with the the female leads. I'm just like, well, how does that bother you? Like, because we were talking about it on a critical level. I was like, well, I'm just kind of reviewing it based on the movie itself, the technical aspects, the story, everything. Like, how do you just focus on that and just really get you boiled up like that? I'm just like, I don't see that, because Star Wars has always been political, so it's never been like something that bothers me, because that's always been the basis behind that entire story arc. So I don't understand.
It's because literally everything at all time is political. That's the nature of it. And so what white people tend to do, and yes, I'm calling even us out on this. I mean, I don't know, but
it's true. We're part of the white.
We are part of it, and to some degree, there's I won't say to what degree, but we're obviously all part of the problem if we're not part of the solution. And the problem is that we don't think that our lives are political, and we do think that the other is political, and it becomes political because of that. And so, politics isn't just government, guys. It's a bunch of other things that are very philosophical to get into. But
do people not know that politics have been
politics means literally pertaining to the people,
right? And it's always been a part of art, not just movies. It's always been a part of music, paintings. Like, this is not something you can escape. Like, I just don't understand the outrage. I think that's where I am focusing on, because I can look at Brie Larson's comments and go, okay, she made some valid points. Joel and I are a part of this film criticism community, which is vastly white. She's just saying, hey, there should be more voices out there. Hey, I agree with you. Okay, we can move on. And then with the whole Star Wars thing, why is it so political? It's always been political. Okay, I'm moving on. It's like, I don't understand why people get so angry about this stuff.
Yeah,
unless they're petulant children that live in their parents' basement and they eat Cheetos and Mountain Dew for their substance. So I mean,
they eat a bunch of Mountain Dew.
Right. they just eat it.
No,
they freeze it.
It is
and
exactly
they eat it.
what everybody's saying about toxic masculinity, and it starts with fan bases that can't control their ideas that are really destructive, and maybe not begins with, but it's certainly part of that. It's on the timeline.
Well, and going back to, see, Joel and I should have like separate episodes discussing these things, because it's really great discussion. But like, Joel, do you remember 2 years ago when certain men's groups were boycotting the all women screening for Wonder Woman? You remember that?
Yeah.
Like, it's nuts.
Yeah, we talked about that.
Right.
Yeah. It's and it's so weird, because I watched one of the videos today, curious, because I wanted to. I mean, I could barely understand anything the guy was talking about in terms of just logic. But one of the things that he brought up is that this wasn't the response to Wonder Woman. I was like, where were you 2 years ago? This was exactly the response to Wonder Woman when it deigned to screen only for women.
Yeah, do you not remember when Alamo Drafthouse was like, "Hey, we're going to do all women screenings for one"? Oh my God! Why are we doing? It's like,
and the entire concept of that particular reading of Wonder Woman was considered like, not with the comics because she wasn't overly sexualized, and so of course there's that whole expectation of the fact that Wonder Woman should be sexualized, and now they're doing something similar here with it's also different. There's not the same thing, the same exact thing, but of course they've kind of rallied around Brie Larson as somebody to hate. So now that they can't sexualize her, they got to do something else, and they've decided to take the SJW's route, which is losing an argument already. And it's a total wash, the whole thing on their end, and history will put them in their place for sure as completely irrelevant tools. All right, well, let's stop talking about this because whatever. Be smart, people. That's what I'll just say. All right, so we're gonna get into a little bit of casting here.
Joel, I'm serious though. If you acted like that online, I would call you out so hard. I would
probably
roast
not
you.
have been a co-host for this long.
I would roast you.
Yes. All right, so let's get into a little bit of casting news. There wasn't much that happened this week, but there's some interesting stuff. So, we recently talked about how Blumhouse was going to be kind of revamping the Dark Universe. And this first movement toward that potentiality is very interesting because we don't know much about what's going on with this casting. It's very interesting if they're going where I think they're going with this. But Elizabeth Moss is in talks to lead their Invisible Man movie. Now, we don't know what lead means as a verb in this case. However, if they're gender flipping this take on this character, that is really cool because we've never had, I don't think, unless I'm missing something, we've never had an Invisible Woman movie or anything like it. So, I mean, I guess except for the character in Fantastic Four. But anyway, we've never had this kind of horror-ish take on it, horror blockbuster action thing. Again, we don't know if that's what Moss's involvement means. We don't know if she's playing like the love interest. I would hope not. I'm honestly gunning for her to take on the main role. We don't know if folks like Tom Cruise, Russell Crowe, and Javier Bardem are still involved because after The Mummy failed and this whole thing didn't come together and Javier Bardem was going to be playing Frankenstein's monster, we don't know if all that's happening still. We do know that Johnny Depp is not involved, which is good. Which is a good thing. He's finally not getting roles after all of the stuff that he's done in his past. I think that's a good thing. I don't, I may like him as an actor, sort of, but I don't want him to take on roles right now. So that's good that he's not involved. Particularly, I mean, pushing past that, if they had done a Mummy type treatment of the Invisible Man, it would have been awful because the Mummy was awful. All right, so there's that. That's really interesting. Next is the fact that Adam McKay is going to be coming back to direct. Oh, no, he's not going to direct it. He's coming back as producer of a big-time comedy. This one is called No Glory. So it's a unique, I'm just reading a sentence here. It's a unique account described as the rambunctious patriotism and worldwide shenanigans of a first-generation American in the clandestine service of a grateful and mostly unwitting nation. So it's interesting. It's going to be an action comedy based in reality to some degree. It's based on an account written by a national security operative, so I know that probably some of it's not true because it can't be. But I do like this. I'm a big fan of Nanjiani. Obviously, like Adam McKay as a director and as a producer, he gets behind some good stuff. So this should be interesting. It comes from the an up-and-coming screenwriter who just wrote the Sundance breakout Corporate Animals from Patrick Bryce. The screenwriter's name is Sam Bain. And so should be interesting to see that come together. The next one involves an Aquaman co-star who's kind of rising up in the ranks, and that is, I'm going to probably butcher this first name. I honestly don't know how to say it, but I think it's Yahya Abdul Mateen II. He was the one who played, what was the character's name?
Was it Black Manta?
Yeah, Black Manta.
Yeah.
I forgot. Sorry. Folks, I'm not a comic reader. He is going to be starring in the main role in the Candyman sequel. Of course, this is the second or third sequel to the original Candyman. It's going to be directed by Nia DaCosta, so woman-directed movie, awesome, and horror movie. And yeah, so again, I'm not super familiar. I'm going to be using the opportunity to certainly catch up with at least the first one, certainly the second one. I think that there's a third one out there, but I honestly can't remember. And next is another comedy. Kind of switching around here, but it is going to be a comedy called Brothers. No, this is not a comedic remake of the 2009 film with Tobey Maguire and Jake Gyllenhaal. But in fact, it is going to be kind of like twins in a way. All right. So this is an interesting pairing, and I actually think that there's probably no more perfect pairing than this to play brothers. And those people are Josh Brolin and Peter Dinklage. I mean, if you think about it, they look like they could come from the same family. So this is really interesting. I mean, it comes from screenwriter Eitan Cohen, who recently won a Razzie, whatever that means, for Holmes and Watson. So I don't know, but whatever. This should be interesting to see them come through. I'm interested on the basis of the actors of these two coming together. But we'll see. Obviously they got to get a good director involved and all of that jazz. So, all right. And the final bit of news involves Rami Malek, fresh off of his Oscar win for Bohemian Rhapsody. He is going to be the villain in Bond 25, currently being called Shatterhand, and I hope it's still called that when it comes to the actual movie. But of course, this is really perfect casting, particularly because he's one of the creepiest looking people. Just on the basis of his eyes, he's perfect for this kind of role, and he's also being joined by a fellow Oscar winner, Lupita Nyong'o, although we don't know who she's going to be playing. So, should be interesting. Yeah, so this is the Bond from Cary Joji Fukunaga, which should be interesting to see him jump from something like Beast of No Nation to this. He also did Jane Eyre, really prolific director. And so that's it. All right. So, Chase, what are your thoughts about all of these?
I like all of this, even with the because I know people are still with the Bohemian Rhapsody thing, but I still think Rami Malek.
Yeah, he's a good actor.
He's a good actor.
I don't want to put him down as just because of his performance this year. I didn't like that performance, but he's a good actor. He's a good actor.
He really is. And if you think about it, Mr. Robot kind of has like that villain tendencies a little bit. He's very paranoid in the show. He's very aggressive in the way he talks to people on that show. And I think if you kind of apply that to doing a monologue in front of James Bond, I think that could actually work. And then Lupita, you can put her in anything.
Oh yeah,
yeah, she's great.
She's one of the best working right now.
Yeah, sure. Ever since I've always liked her choices post her Oscar win of 12 Years a Slave, and so
Yeah, I can't wait to see her in Us.
oh my God, that
And this year's pretty big for her, I think, because she's got, I think she's got a couple of things coming out, or maybe that's Elizabeth Moss. I can't remember, but
either way, I would not be shocked if we got another repeat of just going off on a little tangent, a repeat of Get Out, and she would be nominated for an award.
yeah,
Because it just looks like with her and Winston Duke in that movie, it's going to be killer. Anyways, going up, you were so right about the brothers casting. If you look on the basis of their face and their structure of their face and the way their face is kind of outlined and how their head is shaped, they almost look exactly alike. It's actually kind of freaky, especially when Dinklage grows out his hair. He gets a beard. Like, he looks exactly like Brolin. So
he looks like Llewellyn Moss.
Right. Yeah,
just a shrunken version
right.
of Llewellyn Moss. When he does that, I mean, they literally. I'm looking here at a picture that. Oh wait, it's right there. That Collider uses of one of, I think. Yeah, it's something of Dinklage from Game of Thrones, and he's got, it's a little bit lighter in terms of blonde, but in terms of the blondness of it, but his hair looks exactly like Llewellyn Moss's hair, and it's I'm telling you, it's uncanny kind of.
Yeah, I want to give whoever the casting directors on that movie a huge raise because they did it good.
Yeah,
the Candyman thing, I love. I mean, you are putting Yahya Abdul-Mateen II with Daniel Kaluuya and Lakeith Stanfield, and this is going to be touched by Jordan Peele. I'm pretty sure this might be one of my most anticipated horror remakes that we got going. So that's fantastic news.
Probably next year, I guess. Would be when that is.
Just because those things usually can shoot pretty fast, and I wouldn't be surprised if it was slated for October 30th of next year because Halloween's on Saturday next year. So that would be perfect. So yeah, that's great. Kumail Nanjiani in this, fantastic. Can't wait for the newest season of Silicon Valley. He's just a really great actor. And then Elizabeth Moss in Invisible Man. That is great casting because I just like I told you guys last week, we've been watching The Handmaid's Tale. Now we finished. Now we gotta wait until season 3 in May. But she is such a force to be reckoned with on that show. She's always been great in her indie roles that she's done. She is just a really great dramatic actor, and I think when you add her into not only another great drama role, but you add on top of that a horror bend, that is a great mix. Because Joel, what is that movie that she did that people were raving about? I finally got to see it. Oh God, what? Well, she was out in the cabin.
Do you
remember
Queen of Earth?
Yeah, the Queen of Earth or whatever. Like, that was also a very like dramatic film mixed in with like really horrific type of themes going on. It wasn't like a horror movie, but it was something kind of like a Hereditary, where you take a.
It was terrifying.
Yeah, like it's terrifying in a way where like you can relate to that because it deals with real life problems and stuff, and so. Yeah, I think her being in a bigger movie is fantastic because she has had her due for a while, and I think this is a great step for her. So yeah, this is actually.
I don't think we've ever really seen her in this context before, where there's going to be the horror bend and it's going to be a dramatic role, but it's also going to be very mainstream.
Yes,
it's going to be it's going to be more of a blockbuster kind of thing. Even though it's probably going to have a smaller budget, I know that, but it's going to be. So we haven't seen her in something like that before.
And I honestly think doing that post Handmaid's Tale is such a genius move because I have talked to a lot of women I always, ask everybody, what kind of shows do you like? What's your favorite going on? Most of the women I talk to love The Handmaid's Tale. And if you can get that core audience on top of horror fans to go see a movie, like a mainstream movie called, The Invisible Man with her in it, that could be a recipe for success. And I think it's a very bold move because she's not really a box office draw in terms of movies. But I think with her TV clout right now and just her pedigree that she has had, I think this is going to work for her. I think this is going to be the movie that's going to help propel her career.
Yeah. To the A list, because I think that she's comfortably TV A list.
Right.
And I don't mean to say that as any sort of backhanded compliment, because it's
not.
It's just a compliment. TV's huge right now. But in movies, I think that she's comfortably B-list because she's done a lot of indie stuff, and she's gained clout because of that. But obviously, movie star and great actress are different things slightly, in terms of just the definition of them. So if she can kind of be both the great actress and the movie star, the person that people go to head up something, I really hope that we aren't disappointed to hear that she's the secondary star of this. I really want them to do a gender flip kind of thing, because again, it'd just be super interesting. And anyway, so all right, folks, so let's move on to our shared review, and this is going to be of Fighting with My Family. Now, this one is the feature directorial debut, I should say, of Stephen Merchant. He's an actor. He's been in stuff like The Office, I believe, right? The original Office. I think.
The original. I was just gonna say, like, because you were like The Office. I was like, he might have shown up in a couple of episodes as like cameos, but like, he wasn't like a prominent player.
The original Office, I think he was the Jim counterpart.
Right.
Oh no, that was Martin Freeman. I think that maybe he was maybe I'm not even correct. I think he might have been the Dwight one though. The Dwight counterpart, some counterpart, on that Office to the remake. But this is his directorial debut. It is a biographical picture detailing the rise through the ranks of the WWF, then the WWE, of wrestler Paige, who was born Soraya Jade Bevis to a couple of parents. Obviously played here by Nick Frost and Lena Headey, and Soraya is played by Florence Pugh. She initially starts her career at the age of 13, kind of on a whim as a replacement. Really kind of takes off and immediately knows that this is what she wants to do. From that point onward, she's known as Brittany Knight on stage until she had to change her name to Paige for WWE after getting shot to be recruited. And this movie follows kind of two stories, but the main one is the one of her coming to terms with kind of finding her dream and seeing it fulfilled, and then kind of going through the hardships of training to that end. And all right, so as always, Chase, I'm just going to step away real fast. Start your review, sir.
Alrighty. Just a quick thing that I noticed on IMDb. This is his second film that he has directed, but his first film that he is fully directed. A film that he co-directed with Gervais called Cemetery Junction that came out in 2010. And he co-wrote it with Gervais as well. So, and him and Ricky have done a lot of stuff with like the old Office and the new Office. And, Merchant's always been an actor in a lot of different things kind of throughout the years. And he has written a lot of stuff for TV. He's been a part of some creations like Hello Ladies and a bunch of other stuff. So he's kind of all over the place in terms of comedy. And, him being involved with The Office, like the original Office, like, that, he does comedy, but he's got a lot more to him. There's a lot more underneath him that we don't really know about in terms of how he can tell a story. How can he pull the emotion that you need to follow characters and really kind of be along this journey and kind of root for them the entire way. And I think he brings a lot of that humanity to all of his stuff, whether it be crass and crude or, kind of very subtle, dry humor. He always brings humanity to his movies. And so, going into this one, because I'm sure Joel and I will talk about the fact that we're not huge WWE fans, and by that I just mean we don't watch them. And Joel will tell you guys that he has not ever watched one, and maybe that will sway his opinion or not. But for me, I watched a lot of WWE when I was in high school, where in middle school, where I had a TV in my room, and I would set the sleep timer on my television for 2 hours. That way, by 2 hours, I was probably asleep, and the TV would shut off by itself. That way, I wouldn't waste electricity. But I would always put on wrestling, and I always enjoyed watching it. And I'm not one of these curmudgeons that doesn't watch it because it's fake type of. Listen, they're acting. The whole thing is scripted. They're acting, but they have fun with it. It's very energetic, and these guys and gals work their butts off. I mean, if you think about it, they're on the road for 300 plus days out of the year. There's only 365 days, so the fact that they're spending most of that time on the road, they have to rehearse their lines, they have to keep working out to keep up a physical appearance. It's such a daunting task, and it makes you respect them even more if you already did not respect the WWE. It is a hard thing to do. I do not envy those guys and gals, but I respect them. It's not something I watch all the time, nor have I watched in a very long time, but I have mad respect for them. Now, going into the movie and watching the trailer and stuff, I was still excited for it because I really liked the blend of the kind of hard-hitting comedy in the beginning of the trailer, then switching over into the more dramatic stuff. I like that blend. I remember when Joel was talking about it, he did not particularly.
This is true.
It is very true. I do remember that. But, so with that going in, I saw it, came out of it. It's such a good movie. It's a really, really good movie that it's just a genuine movie, and it makes you just feel good. You just walk out of that theater going, man, I just watched a really, really good movie. To break down some of the specifics, what I really like about it is that we finally got to see Stephen Merchant flex his writing and directing muscles in a solo capacity. Because like I stated before, he worked with Ricky Gervais a lot. He co-wrote and co-directed that movie with him. He's done a lot of stuff for TV. He's acted in a lot of stuff. But we've really never seen him in a solo capacity. And he knocks it out of the park. Not only is this a really well-rounded underdog story that focuses on the main character and achieving her dreams, but also dealing with the consequences of crushing the brother's dreams and how he's going to deal with it. I didn't expect that going in. I expected to see Paige, have this dream, go for it, and come out in the end successful. Because we all know the story. If you guys, watch wrestling or you hear about it and stuff, we all know that she was going to make it. But what I really like that Merchant kind of flexed his writing chops a little bit was show what the brother was dealing with, how the parents were taking this all in, how Vince Vaughn's character was, how were the girls that Paige was competing with. There's so many moving parts to this story that it's not just focusing on Paige and Paige only, Paige. It is a well-rounded character pool that Merchant kind of draws from and showcases a little bit of everybody. And There's even a point where Vince Vaughn's character tells her about the stakes that she's going to have to have when she does this job, and what it might do to some people. Some of the ladies in the group that she's working with, some of them even have their own reasons and stuff, and so we get little peppering of information throughout the movie, and it's really great character work, and it's just a really nice underdog story where if you were not a wrestling fan, you could watch this movie and root for her at the very end. And you're like, why am I rooting for this thing I've, in Joel's case, has never seen an episode of, or in my case, I haven't seen a lot of. But towards the end, it plays out like every other sports movie. Like the true underdog story, it plays out exactly like that. But it has a different kind of style to it, and it has Merchant's stamp on it. So not only does it have all these characters that are working, with each other, kind of bouncing off of each other, and showing the brother side, kind of like this interesting mirror of Paige's success. It's also really funny, and it shows Merchant's comedic chops. It's very, very biting comedy. It's aggressive comedy, but it works because it makes these characters human. It's not the type of humor that's really like overboard, or it feels like people are just saying things to be funny. It feels like these people are just saying stuff that's on the top of their head, and whatever comes out of their mouth comes out of their mouth. And it feels like they're human, and they would say those things. Like, for instance, Lena Headey's character, the mother, she says some pretty crass things, but when you look at it, you're like, that's how she is. That's her character, and she is like that. And so when people are in the room with her and she's saying these things that she thinks are normal, they're just like, oh, that was kind of off, but it made her character likable. And so there's stuff like that. There's stuff with Paige and the brother, and Vince Vaughn. Vince Vaughn's line delivery when he was roasting the wrestlers was fantastic. That was like prime Vince Vaughn back in the day when he was like really funny, like early 2000s Vince Vaughn. I was like, I need more of that. So yes, very funny, really well written. I love the amount of heart this movie has, even with stuff that you would expect in this type of underdog story. I was still touched by some of the scenes that were happening, especially when Paige and her brother were interacting, and their relationship got a little tethered towards the end. Like, you felt that, and it was the fact that these were really well-rounded characters, to where even though we knew where this story was kind of going, we still were on this journey. We felt everything that the brother was going through. We understand that, because people's dreams get crushed all the time, and we can relate to that, and we can find the empathy that you would want for that type of character. And so, yeah, there's a huge amount of heart to this thing, man. And just by the end of it, you love it. You just love everyone in this movie. You love all the people. You love the setting. You love the sport. You love Dwayne Johnson and his 2.5 scenes. Like, you just feel warm when you walk away from this movie, and it's just it's quite special. To kind of bleed off into the acting a little bit, Joel, what is the young lady's name that plays Paige?
Florence Pugh.
Yes, she's wonderful. She has that aggressive attitude, that kind of rebel attitude, but she uses it to fuel her passion, for this wrestling dream. She stumbles in the movie. She feels like all hope is lost, and she finally gets the courage to keep going, especially with the people around her in the wrestling ring and her brother and her parents. It's just, you really got to see that in the acting, and I thought that was really great. The kid that played the brother, fantastic. Probably him and Vince Vaughn were my favorite. And so yeah, he was very like surprisingly good, because like I expected like, hey, this is probably gonna get some good performances, but man, he knocked me on my butt in a great way. I love the parents. I love Nick Frost and Lena Headey. Oddly enough, they have weird chemistry, but it works. And when you see the picture of her parents at the end of the movie, like the real life parents, they kind of look similar, which is scary. So casting director, good job on that. But yeah, they provide that comedic relief, but also the tenderness of parents, in certain situations that help them make their children succeed in whatever they're striving for. Everyone else, like in the WWE world, fantastic. Vince Vaughn, Dwayne Johnson is there. He does his thing. But he has a couple of key moments that, really kind of help Paige along. Even with the group of, women that Paige was always fighting with during training for a while, like even they, to a point where like they were kind of unlikable, but like you still like them when they kind of reveal a few things, and you ended up kind of caring for everybody towards the end. So I thought they did a pretty good job with that. It's a very like brisk film. I think it's like an hour 30, hour 40, and it flies by. It's got such a great energy to it that I would expect nothing less from someone that has been in comedy most of his life, because comedy has to have timing. Comedy has to have great pacing. And so Merchant, he takes what he knows, he applies that to the editing style here, and it's a really quick movie. It's just like you're in it. It starts out with a bang, with the music and the credits, and just the nature of the sport right off the bat. So you're just like, even if you didn't know what WWE was and you lived under a rock, you would be like, okay, I'm interested just from that 3-minute opening, and then it gets right to it, and I appreciate that. It just doesn't waste any time on anything. A really just nice little movie, guys. I've already got I've got To Dust, I've got High Flying Bird, I've got How to Train Your Dragon: The Hidden World, and I think I'm also going to put this currently in the top 10 so far. I mean, obviously it's going to all probably change by the middle of the year, but as of today stands, I really enjoyed Fighting with My Family quite a bit, and I didn't really have any issues with it, to be quite frank with you. It's just a really great movie. So I'm going to give Fighting with My Family a B+. That's as high as I go for most movies, unless it really just kind of wows me with something to where I could dip it up to the A. But I think a B+ is where I will comfortably put it, and I would not mind watching this again. And you know what? Because Joel's going to say it too. This has reignited a passion for me to watch some of the current WWE. So that's a great testament to the movie, because, I was expecting going in, watch the movie, hopefully it was good, and just move on with my life. But now I really want to watch it now. Because the one thing I forgot to mention, they don't just show the wrestling shows in full. They show the behind the scenes. They show the business side of it. They show all the nooks and crannies that go into making a show that had me interested in WWE. It wasn't the actual show itself. It was the mechanics and the kind of the puzzle pieces being placed in order to make a show. That's why I was interested. And now I want to watch it, because once again, I respect the players, I respect the athletes, I respect the crew members. It's just an impressive production that they have to put on every single week. So yeah, B+ for me. Joel, take it away, because I know we're thinking similarly on this. So please ring the praises, sir.
Yeah, and I'm going just a little bit higher. I'm giving this an A-. This thing is absolutely terrific. It just hits all the marks. For me to go in that higher space that you're talking about, that you can't quite go, which is totally fine. We're essentially both giving this 3.5 stars out of 4.
Which a little side note, the past 3 weeks, you and I have been off by a half of a grade.
Yeah.
Like literally a 5 of a grade. So I think that's kind of interesting.
That is pretty interesting. And yeah, I can comfortably say that I was definitely wrong to not look forward to this. Because yeah, I mean, as you said, I wasn't super excited. I didn't think that the trailer sold this movie very well. You did, but I was willing to give it a shot, and yeah, it's fantastic. Kind of right out the gate, I'm going to say this to sort of get back into Oscars talk. I believe that when all the critic stuff is going around, what Lionsgate / Universal needs to do is push for two things particularly. All right, so hear me out here, folks. And I actually I had posted about this on Twitter. I was wrong about one of the categories, but anyway, I think that they need to push this for best adapted screenplay. I originally said original screenplay because I didn't know it was based on anything, but it is based on a documentary.
I 100% agree. If there's if there's one award they should push for this, it's Merchant for adapted.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like I was saying, is based on Max Fisher's documentary, The Wrestlers: Fighting with My Family. It's where the title comes from, and the reason is because honestly, sort of for the same reasons that Green Book just won Best Original Screenplay. I think that there's a crowd-pleasing quality to how this story plays out and how deftly Merchant handles all of those tonal shifts that you're talking about, because the movie is extremely funny, really, really funny, constantly in a way that is palpable almost, and it's really smart that he has, for instance, Nick Frost in a role here, an Edgar Wright veteran, and really funny. So there's that, but it also hits the heartstrings in a way that I don't think is too heavy-handed. A lot of people felt that Green Book was. I didn't, and I think that, and maybe this is going to kill interest for a lot of people. I'm not saying they're the same movie, but I think that it hits sort of the crowd-pleasing areas that does, in a very real kind of tender way, and in a better way. It's a better movie. What am I even talking about? But this is a huge surprise for me. I am sort of on the opposite end as you. I have never really seen any sort of professional wrestling. I think I grew up with a specific kind of set of expectations of it. It was never something, for instance, that my parents watched or my brothers. So I didn't grow up kind of watching it with them. I had this sense that it was just kind of nonsense. I didn't understand that it's not really fake. It's fixed, which is something that they touch on pretty openly here in the movie. That it's fixed, and it's all basically a bunch of TV seasons. It's kind of in the middle ground between reality TV and scripted programming. You're seeing something play out live usually, but it's been coordinated before that, and it's all in good fun. It's not trying to, kind of throw you off or be in any way kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Disrespectful of its audience. It's all about building a piece of entertainment, and that's why it's called, World Wrestling Entertainment. So I never watched it, but as with you getting back into it, I kind of want to start watching these, because what they do in this movie, and it's very, very interesting, is what you're talking about. They get into the nuts and bolts of the training, which is insane. The training regimen that they use on these trainees is almost exactly what I did in whenever I was trying to enter the Air Force and I went to basic military training. I crawled under a mesh thing on my, essentially my arms. I think at one point I did a wheel turnover. I'm not entirely sure, but of course there's a lot going on. Wouldn't be surprised if I did. So they did a lot of these things, and they do them here, and it's because of the shape that you need to be in. They explain it at one point. If you can't turn a big tractor wheel over 3 times, how can you be expected 5 times a night or 5 times a week to, flip people over. It's exactly the same situation over a long period of time, and these people put their bodies into stress, but also get a really good exercise kind of over the course of time, and it's something that immediately I came to respect because it's clearly very accurate to this to the real situation, and yeah, I totally want to watch this stuff now. It's really interesting. We got a big selection of it at work. I might try to start buying them because they're really low priced, and yeah, at least for us. So it's really interesting, and it's also a terrific story because it's not just an ad for this franchise. It's also a human story about kind of dreams fulfilled, and in Soraya's case, or Paige's case, I guess call her Paige, but in Soraya's case, it's dreams fulfilled, and in her brother's case, it's the old adage about dreams deferred. It's and what I liked is that even though Zach, the brother, doesn't get equal screen time, he does get equal weight in the story. They follow him on his own arc, and it's very affecting and rather sad. Um, in that sort of empathetic way that I think Merchant is able to convey through how he tells the story, and through Jack Lawton's performance as Zach is really good, and you know Pugh is also really good as Soraya, and the film moves along nicely, and um, you're also so right about some of these smaller characters, because I'm going to get to Vince Vaughn's character in a second, but these kind of mean girls almost on the among the trainees, these blondes who don't come from England, who immediately try to kind of showcase her accent in a really silly way, and then who increasingly, kind of because of her kind of emo goth whatever appearance with the lip ring and the dark hair and the pale skin, start kind of shoving her off to the side, and she does it in return. And what we learn eventually is the fact that really maybe she shouldn't have done that. There's a little bit more to these people than it seems like. They aren't just I'm not going to use her phrase because we like to keep this PG. So instead, I'm gonna say what Hermione Granger once said in one of the Harry Potter movies. They're not just a bunch of daft dimbos. They have there's some other parts to them, and it's all they're a little more complex than we come to realize. It's not their story, so it's not like it goes off on any tangents, but they aren't just these blonde-headed kind of essentially just unpresent kind of hurdles for her to cross. They also have their own dreams maybe, and aren't just doing this for money. And yeah, it's really well rounded in that way. So with the performances, Nick Frost really good, Lena Headey really good, the brother really good, Florence Pugh really good. But the other thing that I think that Lionsgate needs to push, and Chase is going to think that I'm insane, maybe, unless he doesn't, is the fact that they need to push Vince Vaughn for Best Supporting Actor. And the reason that I'm saying this has sort of halfway to do with his performance, which I think is excellent. And I think it's excellent in ways that maybe people aren't going to realize immediately just because they're focusing on other parts of this movie. And it's a really good performance, particularly when he opens up a bit. But also because of the fact that they can take this opportunity to, at least push to have nominated another role that reminded me a lot of Pat Morita in The Karate Kid, who was nominated for Best Supporting Actor that year, and in 1984. Uh, he lost, but in any case, he was nominated. And the reason that I connect to is because, like Marita, here Vince Vaughn is doing exactly what a supporting actor should do. He's delegating a lot of the screen time to the main actress, but he's also digging his heels and kind of his determination and his focus into a role that is a lot more than just a trainer. And we get that in the scene where he opens up, but we also have Vaughn kind of performing exactly what a supporting actor should do in this kind of role as an authority figure, which is build and then occasionally reshape the tone of a scene, just with his dialogue and just with his presence. And so what he does is he's essentially kind of a commanding the troops character, but with a heart and with a past and with regrets that we are able to learn because of the careful writing and the way that Vaughn plays the role. And I think that really, honestly, he would immediately, um, by kind of putting the focus on his performance as a point in an awards season, I think that you could raise it right to the forefront of people's attention, and I think is a good enough performance to be nominated. Um, so, yeah. So my two things that I think that I'm gonna have a hill to die on here with these is best adapted screenplay because it moves so well through this story um, with such an empathetic understanding for each of its points, and also Vince Vaughn for Best Supporting Actor. Now, I wouldn't be, too hurt if they did Jack Lowden too for Best Supporting Actor, the brother, because of the arc that his character takes and how he is in the role. But I'm telling you, this Vince Vaughn role is kind of, uh, kind of the role of a lifetime, really, um, in ways that I wasn't expecting. And it's not just because he's so good; it's because of how well he's written. Um, so yeah, with all that together, that's why I'm going with an A minus for this. I think it's one of the highlights of the year so far. We haven't gotten too much into it, but I have a feeling it'll remain a surprise, like something that I go back to because, or go back to in my head as a big surprise because I just wasn't expecting it. I was kind of resistant to it just because of that trailer. I stand by the trailer. I don't think it sold this very well because I think what it did is it took all of the little moments that maybe don't work as well as the best moments in the movie, and then they put them in a trailer and they tried to sell it on that. They tried to sell the broadest moments, and I think that there's obviously a broad appeal to it, but I think that once you get into the specifics of the story, that's where it takes over, and that's where it takes off. And I think that yeah, it's extremely effective, and surprisingly so. I can't wait to see it again. It's one of those movies that I really would not mind watching over and over. It's absolutely in terms of just the pacing and the tone and stuff. It's a pleasant watch, but it's also more than that. It's a really kind of dramatic. It's a surprisingly potent one too. And of course, to kind of wrap it all up, the most surprising thing to me is the fact that it got me wanting to watch this kind of this special little corner of the entertainment world that really has no comparison point that I can think of, um, except for with itself almost, that I never even thought I wanted to watch. Now I'm like, man, I want to go out and rent some of these and and see it in action. Because once it gets into the nuts and bolts and it shows all the different sort of things that people have to do to prepare for this, and also just the points of uh, the actual events themselves and kind of the camaraderie that you have to develop with your rival, quote unquote. it just makes it look like people having a load of fun on stage, and they're performers and they want to do this. And so, almost unintentionally, I guess, or maybe intentionally, there's a point at which, um, we're made to kind of think that a thought process would be that models and cheerleaders can't be a part of this, but really they can, as long as they have a performer's spirit. And I think that that's a pretty valuable point, and it's really kind of a touching movie, and I like this a lot. So yeah, A- for me, B+ from Chase. Chase, did you have any idea or thoughts about my thoughts about Vince Vaughn?
No.
Okay, I mean, do you think that they should push him?
I think they should. I mean,
Yeah,
once again, because when we were talking about the Oscar nominations for this past one, I mentioned Melissa McCarthy. She was nominated for supporting actress for Bridesmaids, and I think if you can push a role like that to be nominated, then Vince Vaughn can clearly get pushed for that. Like, he has the comedy chops in this, but he also has like that really kind of inspiring but stern mentor that Paige has, and like it's the balance of both, like you said, to where he's in a scene with her, he can flip it and be like he could be roasting the wrestlers 1 second and then flip it to like, okay, this is what is going to happen. This is what's going to happen to you. You can take that or leave it. And it's like, oh, okay, this is a different side of him that we have not seen in a while. So yeah. I agree with you.
It's like I said, it's the Pat Morita effect, and it just because they're just very similar roles, and I think that they're very similar. They come to a similar impact, and it's very sneaky, but it's there, and I really liked it. So in any case, we both really like this movie. Definitely go see it. It's kind of trickling out there. I think that its initial release was on the 14th. It expanded on the 22nd. It's kind of getting to more theaters, so definitely make this one on your put this one on your viewing list. All right, guys. So we're back at it with top fives. Now, what do I mean by that? I mean that I'm going back through the various years of this decade, and I'm looking at what my top choices were. I'm having Chase join me on this journey to kind of remind you all of his choices, and maybe at some point he'll tell you some choices you didn't know. So I'm at 2014, which was a pretty interesting year. It was obviously the first full year of this podcast, although I didn't even know Chase at that point, I don't think. When was it that I think it was early 2015 that we connected on Facebook. So
Yeah, because
yeah,
if we saw the end of the tour in the summer of that year,
we
it had
had
to
been
been early.
Yeah, we had been in contact with each other, or we kind of knew of each other in any case, through a film group that we were both part of, I believe, at the time. And yeah, so this was the first full year of Reel Me In. And so in a couple of months, we're going to be getting into some kind of unknown territory. But for now, I'm just going to run quickly through what my 10 through 6 selections are, and then go a little bit more in depth with my top 5. So at number 10, I have the best summer blockbuster of 2014, and that is, for me, Godzilla. I adore the movie. I think that it's a killer piece of action cinema. Really kind of a slow burn as well. Builds up to the great moment with the big monster, the big guy, I guess, as everybody calls him, with just such bravado and terrific performance. It's ensemble based. It's also character based, and I like it a lot. It's also a procedural kind of, and I think it's tremendous. My number 9 was Force Majeure from director Ruben Östlund. This one was about a family who is vacationing at a ski resort, and there's an avalanche. The father bails on the family as the mother tries to scoop up her kids. It ends up being an anticlimax. The avalanche isn't that bad, but It's the father's response that kind of sets the wife on edge, in particular, and there were already problems between them. So surprisingly enough, though, it's a comedy. It's a really dark comedy about kind of the strain of marriage, and terrific performances from its leads. I forgot their names right now, but they're both great. Really, an empathetic movie. Number 8 is a movie that Chase and I disagree on, but it's on my list, and I obviously disagree with a lot of people on this. But it's American Sniper, which I think is a lot more ambiguous about its hero than a lot of people seem to think it is. It's primarily an anti-war film that also features war combat that's incredibly intense and visceral. And it features some of the best work from Bradley Cooper that I think he's ever delivered. Um, and I like it a lot. I know that a lot of people don't. I don't expect people to to agree with me at this point. But if you are in the fan base of this movie, I'm with you. I love this thing. Um, Now, so my numbers 7 and 6 are gonna surprise some people considering they're here and they're not in my top 5. But they're both incredibly ambitious projects. And my number 7 is 12 years in the making, and that is Boyhood, from director Richard Linklater, who literally grows up with this kid Mason, played by Eller Coltrane. Although at some point I think he was doing a couple of movies in between, in the middle of this, and was known as Eller Salmon, or Salmon. Anyway, Eller Coltrane, in one of the best performances of 2014, plays this kid through the various years of his aging from the age, I guess it's from about 10 to 22, roughly. We see him in various milestones in his life, but what's really important about the movie is that none of it's told through flashback. It's all through a kind of thing that feels like memory. You remember, for instance, your graduation, but what you remember more is the graduation party. And that's kind of this movie in microcosm. You remember the big things, but you really, really remember the immediate kind of consequences of those things. And that's the beauty of this movie. It's also just a tremendous piece of ambitious storytelling that, other than the documentary series, the Up series, hasn't really been done in this kind of way before. And then my number 6, also equally ambitious, I think, at least in terms of its concept, is Interstellar from director Christopher Nolan. Truly an ambitious film. It doesn't hit every mark, but it doesn't pretend that it needs to. It's a movie ultimately about love, but it's also about space travel. It's about science, and it's about one man's journey to get back to his daughter, and the daughter's journey to find her father. Tremendous cast all the way. Matthew McConaughey, Anne Hathaway, Jessica Chastain, a bunch of people. Wes Bentley, love him. So great film. Surprised it's not in my top 5, but I'm surprised that those two weren't. Now, to get into my top 5, all right. At number 5 is a movie that Chase is going to fire me for having it at number 5, but it is, in fact, Whiplash, from director Damien Chazelle, which I believe is potentially still the best film I've seen of his. I haven't seen his debut, which was Guy and Madeline on a Park Bench way back in 2008, I think, or 9. Also a musical, by the way. It was a musical. I haven't seen that. It's kind of not easy to find it. I think it's been variously on Netflix over the years. I don't know if it is right now. But I do love Whiplash. It's essentially a thriller about a jazz drummer who meets his own R. Lee Ermey, almost, in this teacher played by J.K. Simmons in a snarling, explosive performance. The kid's played by Miles Teller. Also a great performance, one that shouldn't be overlooked just because of his co-star. It's a movie about art, the creation of art, the idea that maybe not everybody's cut out for what they think they are, Um, and it ends on this note that was weirdly enough, I don't even know if Chase you knew this, but misread as a happy ending. Because what I felt whenever I saw it was this sense of dread that maybe this Fletcher guy, maybe he's right. And it ends on this shot, like all Chazelle's movies do, of two people looking at each other in a moment um, that isn't so happy. Um, there's a real intensity in that moment, and I think it's one of the best final scenes of a movie I've seen this decade, which is probably going to surprise people that it's not higher on this list. 2014 was a great year. That's where this one falls. I just can think of four movies that I love more than this one, but it's an amazing piece of work, certainly, and yeah, best film editing of 2014, if nothing else. Um, all right. Now, oh, and also somehow shot in 19 days. I don't know how that is possible on planet Earth, but yeah, it was shot in 19 days. Number four on my list was Inherent Vice from director Paul Thomas Anderson. A lot of people think that it's a directionless doodle. In fact, our friend Mark does. I do not. I think that the directionless doodlement of it, if that's even a phrase, um, is the point. This is a confusing labyrinth in which the point of the end of the plot is not even the point of the plot. In fact, the movie pretty much comes to that conclusion by leading us through, as one critic once put it, a bong haze of a plot, in which all of the connecting points are completely irrelevant to the final one, which is that nothing matters. This is an incredibly nihilistic movie. I don't think people quite understood how nihilistic it was. Um, but, of course, they probably should, considering it's Paul Thomas Anderson. And it's really dominated by a bunch of great performances, from Joaquin Phoenix to Josh Brolin to Catherine Waterston to Martin Short to Benicio del Toro. Um, and yes, it's the kind of movie where you can say Martin Short and Benicio del Toro's names in the same sentence. Yeah, great plot. This is also an early role for, I believe, Hong Chow. I think that she's in this briefly from Downsizing. And yeah, I adore this movie. I think it's completely wild, wacky. I've seen it 3 times. I saw it twice in theaters and once on Blu-ray, and I loved it every time. In fact, I loved it more. It was originally, whenever I originally saw it, I was in the process of kind of formulating my top 10, and I was like, okay, this is outside my top 10, right outside my top 10. But I think originally when I published my list, this was number 2. It's kind of been knocked down a couple paces since then, but still, great piece of work. My number 3 is the Best Picture winner of 2014, and that is Birdman or The Unexpected Virtue of Ignorance, from director Alejandro G. Iñárritu. And this is a movie that I did not connect with on my first viewing of it. I found it to be self-indulgent and cynical, and then whenever I came back to it, I realized it's actually about self-indulgence and cynicism, and it follows a washed-up movie star, former movie star, who was famous for playing a superhero, and that person is played by Michael Keaton, who at one point was considered washed up because of his decisions to be in stuff like White Noise, and because he was famous for playing Batman. So, of course, there's a meta-referential kind of quality to that casting, and it paid off in what I think is potentially the best performance of all of 2014. As a man who's trying to have his career taken seriously with a Raymond Carver adaptation, in which he is the star and the director, and the writer, and kind of the producer as well, of all of the stage production. And meanwhile, it's kind of all crumbling around him as just various things happen. He has to replace an actor when the first one is freakishly knocked out by a falling light fixture. And there's a bunch of actors here that are doing absolutely tremendous work. There's Edward Norton, um, and Emma Stone, Naomi Watts, Zach Galifianakis, and etc. And it's all done in a falsified one take that was a lot of really long takes, but um, obviously all edited together to look like a single take, which I think is kind of a coup stylistically because some of this does not take place in reality. It's a very interesting kind of way to approach that gimmick, which we've seen, before. We've seen genuine versions of this, stuff like Victoria, and which came after this movie, but still, or Russian Art from back in 2002, which was an actual 90-minute take in which all of the actors had to be on cue in a tour through Russian history. I've not seen that movie, but that was one thing that was done. And obviously, The Revenant from Iñárritu used a lot of long takes. And but this is a real, just a total like. I just love how funny this movie is. It's a comedy first and foremost, and I love that. My number 2 is 2 Days, One Night from directors Jean-Pierre and Luc Dardenne. This one stars Marion Cotillard as a woman named Sandra who has just been laid off from her job, is dealing with severe depression, and has been told that instead of hiring her back, the company has opted to give bonuses to her fellow workers. And she really needs this job if she's going to survive. So she goes around interviewing all of her coworkers, trying to have them, kind of reach into their hearts and allow her job back. And what we realize is that they all have stakes in their job too. Some of them legitimately cannot give up bonuses. Some of them don't want to. And in the midst of all this is an empathetic study of just a woman struggling to stay afloat in a bitter economy. And it's if Michael Keaton was the best performance of the year, this was probably the best female lead performance of 2014. It's a great piece of filmmaking too, very quiet. But it's a terrific example of tonal management that I talk about a lot with directing, or tone management, and it's great. Any other year, it might be number 1, but unfortunately, in 2014, there was a film that was released, and Chase probably knows where I'm going with this, that is unlike anything else I've seen, and it's called Under the Skin, from director Jonathan Glazer. This is a guy who does not direct very commonly. His first feature-length film was a movie called Sexy Beast back in 2001. Great movie with Ray Winstone and Ben Kingsley. It's a gangster story. He also directed a movie called Birth with Nicole Kidman and the kid from X-Men: The Last Stand. I forgot his name, but haven't seen that. I've heard really good things. I need to. Glazer's also directed a lot of music videos for Radiohead. Of course, I've seen those. And this is unlike anything else he's directed or anything else pretty much in existence. It's Kubrickian, but also kind of not. It's about this alien who has taken on the appearance of a beautiful woman played by Scarlett Johansson as it, in her guise, goes around a city in Scotland and hunts men in order to feed on their essence. And their essence usually is all of their insides and bones without the skin. It's kind of disturbing, but it's also lyrical. It's an allegory about body positivity. It's a total mind trip. It's got one of the best scores I've ever heard in a movie. It's got some of the best cinematography I've ever witnessed in a movie. It's one of the most hypnotic pieces of filmmaking I've seen in I don't think I've seen something quite this hypnotic and out there since this movie. And I love this movie. It's not for everybody. If you go and watch it, it's on Blu-ray. If you go and watch it and you hate it, don't say I didn't warn you. It's very much an acquired taste kind of thing, and I've acquired the taste for this kind of movie. It's very much out there. It's very much in my wheelhouse, but it might not be in yours. So there you go. So brief recap of my top five: Whiplash at number 5, Inherent Vice at number 4, Birdman at number 3, 2 Days, One Night at number 2, and Under the Skin at number 1, with Interstellar, Boyhood, American Sniper, Force Majeure, and Godzilla filling out my top 10 of that year. So, Chase, any thoughts on my list?
I mean, we have a lot of overlap. Not in the same position, per se, but definitely a lot of overlap. 2014 was a great year. Like, I haven't seen my top 10 list in a long time, but re-looking at it, this is a solid list. I am very proud of myself, and I know that's super narcissistic to say, but good Lord, I have some good taste. Okay, so blazing through 10 through 6 real fast. Number 10, I have The Congress. This is the one with Robin Wright, and it's a really, really interesting blend of live action and hand-drawn animation, and it's absolutely stunning in every sense of the word, not just with the animation, but just the journey that Robin Wright's character goes on, because she plays herself in the movie. I'm not going to tell you what the plot's all about or whatever. It's a really great one.
Go ahead, sorry.
I was just going to say that I saw it at the Dallas Film Festival, and I remember saying, wow, this is really great. I can't wait for people to see it. It never went to theaters. I think it went to the Alamo Draft House for like a little bit, and then went straight to DVD and Blu-ray, because the Draft House actually made it. They made the movie, so they had distribution rights, and so it didn't go anywhere else. And so I was like, man, I really wish a lot more people saw it, because I've been singing the praises for was it 5 years now, and I still stand by it. I know a lot of people either A, didn't really care for it, or B, had not seen it. If you like some weird, trippy stuff, The Congress is for you.
What's interesting is we actually saw this at the same time.
Right, I remember you saying that.
Yeah, so this was my third year at the film festival in a row. And because I'd first gone in 2012, then I went in 2013, and this showed at the 2014 one. And it was interesting because I think you're right. There was a brief release at the beginning of that following September of 2014, but only for a week, and then it just kind of disappeared. It went off on the Blu-ray, which is hard to find. It's still pretty valuable, and yeah, it's a terrific movie. It probably would be in my 11 through 15. I really love that pick. So anyway, go ahead.
Do you know where I got the Blu-ray? A little fun story. I not only do I have the Blu-ray of the movie, but I have it in a Blu-ray Blockbuster case, because when I went to the Blockbuster liquidation in Dallas, I got 3 movies. 2 of which I don't even own anymore. I kept The Congress. I got Pain and Gain, The Amazing Spider-Man, and The Congress. Don't ask me why. But yeah, I have that, and I was really excited to see. I was like, "Are you kidding me? It's out on Blu-ray already!" So, because I think the one in Dallas, I think that Blockbuster liquidized that year, so that would make perfect sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Congress, great little film. Next one is not my only A24 film on this list, but the first one from A24 is Enemy. Really great, underrated Jake Gyllenhaal movie. Second one from Denis Villeneuve. First one was Prisoners, then he did Enemy, then he did Sicario, Blade Runner, now he's doing Dune. So he's or Arrival, then Dune. So he's definitely advanced his filmography since then. Enemy is a very small film, very self-contained.
Shot before Prisoners, by the way.
Yeah. It was shot way before Prisoners. It got that release because of Prisoners.
Yep.
And Enemy is like 80 minutes long, minus the credits. It's a really short movie, but it it's got one of those ending shots that still haunts me to this day because of of that specific creature that I hate in real life. So, very thought provoking. I love all the analyses on the interwebs on this movie. It's a really great one. Number 8, speaking of Jake Gyllenhaal, Jakey G, Nightcrawler, is my number 8. Absolutely love it. From Dan Gilroy, an explosive debut from that man. I never saw Roman J. Israel or Velvet Buzzsaw, so guess what? It's the only one I've seen from him. So for right now, he's 1 for 1. So Nightcrawler, really great, kind of neo-noir, modern-day thriller with a very paranoid Jake Gyllenhaal capturing that news.
Another movie among my 11 through 15. I love that movie.
You're crazy.
It's a great thriller. It's a great satire, but it's almost kind of too real to be satire. It's crazy. Crazy movie.
I think even if everyone agreed that like this movie was awful, I think everyone can at least point out that Jake Gyllenhaal was amazing in that film. Number 7 is actually way higher on Mark's list, but for my number 7 is the Lego Movie. Very charming little animated feature that just kind of caught everyone off guard. I will always remember that moment because I had what was it? It was either my second or my third stomach surgery, and I remember I went to my parents' house to recover, and my dad took myself and my brother to go see it. Now, this is before I heard anything about it. I was just like, ugh, why did they make a movie about the Lego brand? I was laughing so hard that I tried to stop myself because my stitches were hurting. So I will always remember that moment. And then my dad fell asleep. Not really his thing, but that's okay. Number 6 is one I actually contend that Channing Tatum should have been nominated over both Steve Carell and Mark Ruffalo, and that's Foxcatcher. Absolutely love it. Very slow burn type of horrific character study on everybody in that movie. It's just a slowly disturbing picture. Still affects me. I know people love Carell in the movie, and I do too. Ruffalo also got a nomination. But, dude, Tatum gave like 150,000% of his acting muscle into that movie, and it's the best thing I've ever seen him do so far.
It's the best performance in the movie. I agree with you.
It's better than all 3 of them, and I love all 3 of them to death. But if I had to push one for the Oscar, it would have been Tatum, 100%. Yeah. All right, so here's my top 5 of 2000.
By the way, that's my number 11. It's
God,
almost on the list.
Why are you picking stuff that's always just outside my list? It's just it's not nice, Joel. Right. My number 5 is Boyhood. Absolutely love Boyhood. 12-year journey that Linklater took us on. The fact that he was able to do this over the 12 years is impressive. I know a lot of people think of it as a gimmick. I think of it as a really interesting way to tell a story. And the fact that we got to see LR and Patricia and Ethan grow like physically like throughout this movie, and it's actually them with no makeup. It's just, or you know what I mean? Like no digital aging or whatever. It's just, it's impressive. And I'm starting to realize that Joel might be in a midlife crisis, or at least a mid-quarter crisis, because he has loved films like Boyhood and Lady Bird and all these other coming-of-age films, to where I think as the older Joel gets, the more he's going to like those movies. So it's just a little observation I pointed out.
Help me, guys.
Okay. Right. As you get older and you start reminiscing on your youth, I get older and still cling on to my my childhood. I'm like, ooh, comic book movies. This is my vice now. Which is ironic because I started watching the Marvel movies when I was 18. So that's when they came out. Okay. Number 4 is Birdman, or The Unexpected Virtue of Ignorance. Everything that Joel said, a really great one-shot film that's actually 8 shots if you look at the editing. But it's a really impressive one-shot movie. Very great kind of comeback performance from Michael Keaton. He's been kind of quiet up until this one, but he really kind of showed us why he's one of the best. And then, Lubeski won for cinematography. Of course, this one for Best Picture. Second in a row, and they won...
Of three.
Yeah, of three. It's like, that guy's a legend. And, of course, Inarritu won for this. He went on to win 2 in a row as well, with The Revenant and this. So, Birdman, great movie. All right, my next two are definitely of the weird bunch, kind of in the same vein as like Enemy, but number 3 is Gone Girl. It is pure Lifetime trash, and I absolutely love it. What Gillian, however you pronounce her name, Flynn does is that she takes material that's relatively similar and kind of has like that trashy feel to it. It's the same way with like Sharp Objects or even like Dark Places. And she gets like these great filmmakers to take it and make it worthwhile. Joel, what's his the gentleman's name that did Wild with Reese Witherspoon?
Jean-Marc Vallée.
Yes. Yeah. So he directed all the episodes of Sharp Objects, so that heightened it up a little bit. Dark Places, I forgot who the director was but it was better than it should have been. And of course, Gone Girl is good old David Fincher. I know Joel and I disagree on this one, but I like Gone Girl quite a bit. Very kind of subtle, explosive performances from Affleck and Pike. And of course, Pike was nominated that year. Really just luscious cinematography, really great score, and just kind of like this meticulous, just peaceful direction that Fincher likes to do, and then just like he will throw in a couple scenes in the middle of something that you're watching, and it goes into a complete 180, and you're just kind of befuddled at what you're watching. But that's what he does.
This is definitely the one sort of like I have American Sniper on my list,
right?
And you've got Gone Girl on your list. I just full disclosure, I don't like this movie. I think that once it plays its major card, it lost me. Now I need to see it again.
To some degree, I can kind of agree with you, just because they show their card fairly early in the movie, and then it kind of just teeters towards the end.
Yeah, and I don't know. It's very much. It's like you said. It's Lifetime trash. But elevated a little bit because of Fincher. I think that he has a good eye. Logistically, he's very precise in his direction. I think the screenplay has numerous problems, but in any case, I'm not a fan. I know that I'm in the minority on that, and I know that I need to revisit it because I haven't seen it since the theater. I've sometimes come around to these kinds of movies, but for me, The Gift the next year was every bit what this movie wanted to be,
right?
And I like that one a lot more. There's a lot more, I think, in that one going on beneath the surface. But and for this one, it's all surface. But I can understand the mindset of enjoying it so much anyway, because certainly I've been in that position before. So I know that I'm kind of a weird one on this one.
Well, and that's why I've always really enjoyed Fincher, because he will take each movie that he does, and it's so radically different from the previous one to where it feels like it's fresh. Like, it feels like this is a filmmaker that's been in hiding for 20 years and then just makes like a fresh movie. Like The Social Network, Seven, Fight Club, Benjamin Button. They're all so different from one another. I think that's what makes him so unique, is that, I appeal to the Lifetime trashiness of this because it's kind of just different from anything else he's ever done, but it works because of, like you said, he elevates it with the cinematography and the music and the acting to where it is, something that could play on Lifetime at 2 p.m. on a Thursday, but I would be their first one to watch it. So it's just, it's a weird mix. But
it's a very sensual film, and by that I mean it activates all of the senses.
Right.
And it's a extremely visual movie. Because of Cronenweth, I think it's Cronenweth cinematography, and certainly, I mean, the different points of the story are all, there's a lot of nerve that this movie has. It felt a little empty to me, but again, I'm just repeating myself. I'm in the minority on that, and
But then again,
I
Joel,
love.
it's been 5 years. You might change
That's
your
true.
mind.
That's true. Yeah, I've grown a lot since even 2004 as a viewer. So certainly, I do need to. I loved Pike. That was one connecting thing with everybody else that I had. Rosamund Pike was
She
great.
was electric in
Yeah,
that
very
movie.
very good.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Speaking of electric performances, and still my favorite movie she's ever done and ever will do, unless she tops herself. My number 2 is Under the Skin. I've seen that movie 3 or 4 times now. I love it every single time. I was even one of those people to where when I left it the first time, I was like, "What did I just see?" And then I had to read up on some certain things, and then when I rewatched it, I was like, "Oh, okay, yeah." I was thinking it was this thing, and it totally makes sense now because this one little clue is just, oh my god, this movie is exactly like what you said. It's like as if Stanley Kubrick was like his soul was in Jonathan Glazer. It's kind of impressive. So not only is it immaculately shot, but Scarlett Johansson doesn't have that many lines of dialogue in this, so it's all a facial, physical, kind of visual performance that she gives, and even like towards the end, it still gets me knowing like what she went through, knowing what she discovered about the human race, and when she finally just breaks down in the woods at the end, it's a really satisfying arc from that character for someone that has virtually no lines. It's just a haunting and beautiful type of love story between aliens and humans. I can't shake it out of my head. Joel's right. It's one of my favorite scores I've ever listened to. Definitely one of my favorite cinematography of this decade. Like, if we were to make a list right now, top 10, 2010 to 2019, this would be in there. And
essentially, the movie is about a visitor from another planet, and yet it exists in her or its headspace.
Right.
So it makes Scotland look like an alien planet. And that's the best thing that I can come up with the cinematography, right, because it does not look like Earth to me.
No, it doesn't.
And it's because it does not look like whatever planet this thing comes from.
Right.
And so Daniel Levin, or David Levin, I forgot his name, but the cinematographer, that's the accomplishment. I think that's the best accomplishment that I could probably point out on his end, is because it's just unlike anything I've seen, and it's Earth, and the woods feel like some strange, like directly out of a Tarkovsky movie or something. It's strange and unearthly and alienating, and that was a very intended pun.
Well, and it works with the themes of the movies and how she feels alienated, not only within her own species, like with the boss and everything, but like with humans,
within the skin too,
right,
because hence the title. Once the movie ends, we know what happens, and we know, we know what happens there, and what happens with the shedding of the skin moment is honestly like the second or third viewing. Once I'd gotten used to the rhythms, it kind of broke me. I got a little teary-eyed, and it was because of Johansson's performance. I think the first 2 times I was just still so stunned that this movie existed.
you get teary-eyed because you realize how crappy the human race is, and you're like, why am I a part of this? Why am I a part of this species?
Exactly. You've been following this creature that is killing, indiscriminately because it knows nothing else, and then once it decides to open itself up to humanity strikes back in a way that is absolutely horrifying.
Yeah.
And you realize that there are basically both ends are predators. And but
you're right though. I have to give this warning. Within the first 3 minutes, you might be turned off from this movie.
Yeah.
So I just want to
immediately. It's what I like to call a wavelength movie. If you're not on the wavelength pretty much immediately as it begins, you're not going to be on the wavelength, because it keeps that rhythm. It quickens the pace a little bit as it ends, but quite literally the final 5 minutes or something. Before that point, it is very much a film with one pace, and it's going to be a pace that either you're immediately like, "Whoa, I want to see more," or you're like, "Nah, not feeling this."
Yeah, it's like what is this garbage that you suggested?
Right.
No, I will because I know it's my number two of this year. But if I had to make a sacrifice, I might push another movie out from a previous year or whatever to accommodate these top two for the best of the decade, because I believe the best picture of this year, without a doubt, should have won Best Picture. Miles Teller should have been nominated. It should have been. It should have won for screenplay. It did win for editing, so thank God, because the editing is astonishing in this movie.
One supporting actor
and supporting actor. That was the only lock that year that we were just like, yeah, he's got this. It's Whiplash. I saw this and Birdman the same day. I did a double feature and saw Birdman first, and then I saw Whiplash second. And what a great way to end the day! I was so blown away by not only the captivating performances, but just the striking and precise editing of this film. I was like, this makes me want to be an editor again. And I rarely say that, but it is one of the best edited movies I've ever seen. I've seen it 5, 6, 7 times now. Never gets old. That ending climax is still just amazing to witness, not only on a cinematography level, but just pure acting prowess from J.K. and Miles. And I'm with Joel on this one. This is the best thing he's done. Damien Chazelle, I think he should have won the Oscar for this movie instead of La La Land. I like La La Land, but it ain't no Whiplash. He should have won for that. I love First Man, but I still think Whiplash is his best. And fun little tidbit: if this would have won Best Picture, Jason Blum would have had his first Oscar. So that is also fun. But yeah, Whiplash number one for sure. As soon as I saw it, I was like, nothing's going to beat it. Nothing will beat it. It has the best ending of this year. Well, besides Under the Skin. Like, Under the Skin, Whiplash had the best endings of the year.
They're pretty close together.
Right. And so, so it's oh God, this year, Joel, you're so right. 2014 is so good. Just looking at this list, it just makes me happy.
And I can't wait to get to the beginning of April and talk about 2013, because I think 2013 is still the best year for movies so far this decade.
Ooh,
and yeah, I mean, of movies, so to kind of hint a little bit, of movies that he and I have both seen, I think that it's probably the widest gap in terms of his number one to where I have it on my list. Of movies that we've both seen, I think. Of the ones I know about. Obviously, we haven't gotten it earlier than that. But
I will just say this. If you thought Joel getting the Ladybird bug bite in 2017 was kind of out there, let's just say that my pick for 2013 is the same way.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, I have a feeling it's pretty far up his list of the best movies of the decade. So I know that your top one there. Mine, it's interesting. My 2013 list, again, just a hint, because I'm not going to go into specifics, but my list is dominated by love stories, which I found whenever I was putting it together. And even if they're not expressly love stories, there's some element of them in which love, maybe except for one movie, has a big part. And yeah, so I can't wait. It's a great year. I've got a fairly unconventional list, because there were so many that I loved, and some surprising ones don't make the list, but it's pretty great. So I can't wait for that. Speaking of which, all right, so recently I've come to the realization, folks, that in terms of my viewing schedule for new releases, for 2019 releases and such, I've been exhausting myself, because what I decided to do about almost a year ago, was catch up with stuff that I missed, stuff that was VOD on DVD. And what I ultimately was doing was trying to fit all of those in every week, kind of, the selections that came out on DVD. And I exhausted myself. I ultimately just kind of ran out of energy. I've honestly found that I haven't been sleeping very well, and I'm always exhausted. So there's that compounding it. So what I've decided to do is step away from that. I'm lessening the number of reviews I write on my website, and I'm taking on another project. I'm keeping myself busy still, but this one doesn't require any writing. So for on one part on my personal Facebook page and on this, I'm kind of taking on this project that I will have. Well, I basically run indefinitely on the show. So here's what the project is. What I realized upon this Oscars is that I kind of want to go back and kind of run through a lot of the Oscars of previous years, watch what I haven't seen across many of the major categories, which will basically mean not stuff like Best Foreign Language Film, a lot of which, once I get to like the 90s, are not even available to see anymore. But, stuff like visual effects, those will be easy to see. I might choose a couple of tech categories to cover, but for the most part, it's going to be major categories: the acting, screenplay, picture. I might loop director into picture in the same segments. But anyway, I'm going to be going back through, kind of running down, starting with 2015. What were the Best Picture nominees? What won, and what do I think should have won that year? I think it's going to be fun because there's going to be some years, and I've already covered a few of them here at home, that I've not seen all the nominees. So this will give me a chance to do that. For instance, I think that there is a year in the 1990s, and I'll eventually get to that. That's going to be a while from now. But there's going to be a year in the 1990s where I've seen none of the nominees for Best Picture. So that's going to be really fun to see all those for the first time and think on them a little bit. This is not going to be every single show, for instance, where I'm not starting it next week. I'm starting it the week after. And I'll probably not do it again for a few weeks after that. But I really want to do this, partly because I think that giving myself the kind of the officialness of it being on the show will allow me to see it through this time. What I usually do with big projects like this is I start them, get a little bit into them, and then stop, because I have other things. But I think that this, especially not writing about the movies, will help me to kind of juggle them around in my head a little bit better. And I might honestly take this to Twitter too, just to kind of spread the love a little bit, especially when I can get to fit all the nominees in a tweet. So yeah, just kind of keep your ears out, or your eyes out, whatever. I tried to shift that a little bit, and it didn't work. But March 15th, I'm starting this with our review of Captive State. It's going to be our special segment that weekend, and I'm starting with the Oscar-nominated Best Picture and Best Director potentially nominees of 2015. That's the 88th Oscars, I believe. So yeah, if y'all are, I feel like this would be interesting to you guys too, because y'all don't know a lot of my thoughts on these early parts of the decade, and except for these top 10 lists that aren't going to last very long. And and I'm looking forward to it too. I think that this will be a fun little project that again is going to be very ongoing. So Chase is not joining me for this. This is going to be a Joel-centric one. He doesn't have time. He has his own life. I've got less of one outside of work and stuff, so I can pretty much do this. And so I'm excited. So look out for that. All right. Speaking of future episodes, next week we are definitely not reviewing Captain Marvel, right, Chase? I'm just kidding.
And I will tell you that you're fired. Joel, I've been waiting since July for the next Marvel installment. If you do not give me this opportunity to talk about it, I will hurt you. I will harm you.
You heard it here, folks. We're reviewing the small animated film Reuben Brandt Collector. No, we are reviewing Captain Marvel, the 21st, right? Film in the I think
Right,
it's the
because
21st.
Ant-Man and the Wasp was the 20th.
Yes.
Right.
So the 21st film. Can't wait to see if they connect all the pieces with Avengers Infinity War and lead us right into Avengers Endgame. Really excited for this movie. Um, and yeah, I can't wait. I've got my ticket already scheduled for next Friday. So really excited. All right. You can find my writing at joelonfilm.com, although I haven't done anything in a couple of weeks, so I guess you can't find some of my writing there. But you can at dallasmoviescreenings.com sometimes. You can follow me on Twitter for my incessant rambling at real Joel Copling. That's REEL Joel Copling, and on Letterboxd at J Copling. I'm forgetting stuff because it's late. Chase, take over. Where are you?
Yeah, if you guys want to follow me on Twitter, it's at Real Chase Lee, and the podcast Twitter is at Real Me and Podcast. And of course, for this particular show, this Real Me and Colin the Movie podcast, if you're listening on Castbox, Spotify, iTunes, iHeartRadio, or even Spreaker itself, please give this a like, favorite, whatever, and spread it around. Is just spread the good word. We appreciate you guys helping us grow this show, and we just continue to keep growing. So this has been episode 268 with Fighting With My Family. Next episode, 269, as Joel stated, Captain Marvel. So we will see you guys next week for Captain Marvel, and just let us know all your thoughts down below for this week's episode. We will see you guys next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.